She drove 6 hours through winding mountain roads to surprise her husband with the news that would change their lives forever. But when she stepped out of the car and heard a child's laughter coming from inside the cabin, Monique Patterson realized her entire marriage had been a lie. 5 years. 5 years of being the perfect wife. 5 years of hosting dinner parties for men who looked through her like she was furniture. 5 years of sleeping alone in a $12 million prison while Harrison took his sacred fishing trips. 5 years of believing she was the problem. That she wasn't exciting enough, passionate enough, present enough. And now, standing in that gravel driveway, with a positive pregnancy test in her purse and tiny fishing boots wrapped in ribbon on the passenger seat, Monique discovered the real reason her husband kept pushing back on starting a family. He already had one. Through the cabin window, she watched Harrison, her Harrison, sitting at a breakfast table with a blonde woman and 2 children who had his jawline, his green eyes, his smile, the same smile he gave Monique on their wedding day. The same smile he gave her when he convinced her to drop out of law school. The same smile that had been lying to her face for half a decade. What would you do if you discovered your entire life was built on a lie? Have you ever trusted someone so completely that you ignored every red flag? Have you ever given up your dreams for someone who was never giving you the full truth? If you have, or if you know someone who has, this story is going to hit different. Every year, thousands of women discover their husbands have been living double lives, hidden families, secret children. Lies stacked on lies. Most of them crumble. Most of them disappear quietly. But Monique Patterson? She was about to teach one lying billionaire that the most dangerous thing a powerful man can do is underestimate the woman he betrayed. Stay with me until the end, because what Monique does next, and who she teams up with to do it, will be the most satisfying revenge story you've heard all year. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been lied to, if you've ever wanted to watch a cheater get exactly what he deserves, subscribe now. Because you don't want to miss how this ends. Now, let me take you back 5 years. To the night, Monique Patterson made the first mistake that would cost her everything. She wasn't supposed to be there that night. The invitation was meant for someone else, a girl named Keisha who called in sick with a fever. A shift Monique reluctantly covered because she needed the extra $100. A fundraiser that would ruin her life, disguised as the best night she'd ever had. At 24 years old, Monique Patterson was 1 semester away from graduating Howard University Law School. 1 semester away from becoming the civil rights attorney she'd dreamed of being since she was 12 years old, watching her grandmother get denied a loan at a bank that handed them out like candy to white families in the same tax bracket. But dreams don't pay rent, and law school doesn't pay for itself. So 3 nights a week, Monique traded her case law textbooks for a cocktail tray. She worked events at the Hamilton Grand Hotel, serving champagne to people who made more money in an hour than she'd see in a year. People who never looked at her face, never said thank you, never noticed she existed at all. That night was supposed to be the same. The ballroom dripped with old money and older secrets. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across silk gowns and practiced smiles. Senators, oil executives, tech billionaires. The kind of people who shaped the world while everyone else just lived in it. Monique moved through them like a ghost, invisible in her white service shirt and black slacks, carrying champagne flutes to hands that never bothered looking at her face. Until Harrison Fletcher turned those green eyes on her like she was the only color in a black and white photograph. He was 33 years old, guest of honor, recently featured in Forbes for turning his father's struggling oil company into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The article called him ruthless in business and charming in person. It failed to mention he was also the most beautiful man Monique had ever seen. She didn't mean to spill the champagne. Her heel caught on the carpet edge as she approached his table, and before she could recover, golden liquid splashed across his sleeve. His very expensive sleeve. The sleeve of a suit that probably cost more than her car. Monique froze, mortified, waiting for the anger. The cold dismissal. The complaint to her manager that would cost her this job she desperately needed. Instead, Harrison Fletcher laughed. Not a polite, social laugh. A real one. The kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made everyone at his table turn to stare. "Well," he said, looking down at his damp sleeve, "that's the most interesting thing that's happened to me all night. I am so sorry, sir. I'll pay for the dry cleaning. You'll tell me your name." he interrupted gently. That's all I want. Monique. Monique Patterson. He repeated it slowly, like he was memorizing it, like it mattered. Monique Patterson. I'm Harrison, and I think you just saved me from dying of boredom at my own party. She should have walked away, she knew that. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, the same words Lorraine Patterson had repeated since Monique was old enough to listen. Education first. Men can wait. Dreams can't. But Harrison didn't let her walk away. He found excuses to return to her section all night. Needed a fresh glass. Wanted to know if the kitchen had any of those crab cakes left. Asked her opinion on whether the band was playing too loud. Each time, he asked her something about herself. Where she went to school. What she was studying. What she wanted to do with her life. No one at these events had ever asked Monique what she wanted. They barely acknowledged she was human. But Harrison looked at her like she was the most important person in the room. And God help her, she believed him. At midnight, when her shift ended, and she walked to the parking garage alone, he was there. Leaning against a concrete pillar near her 10-year-old Honda. Not threatening. Almost boyish. Hands in his pockets. Nervous smile on his face. I know this is forward, he said, but can I take you to breakfast? He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Feel the heat radiating off his chest through his tailored jacket. Close enough that the space between them felt electric. Already promising something she knew she shouldn't want. He didn't touch her. That was the thing. He didn't need to. His hand had brushed hers earlier when taking the champagne glass. Lingered 1 second too long. His gaze had dropped to her lips when she apologized for the spill. And now, in that parking garage, he was looking at her like she was already his, before he even asked. Have you ever met someone who made you forget every rule you'd set for yourself? Someone who looked at you like you were already theirs before they even asked? Drop a comment if you know exactly how dangerous that feeling is. She said yes to breakfast. Then yes to dinner the following week. Then yes when he asked her to skip her evidence final because he'd planned a weekend in Martha's Vineyard. Just the two of them. Private beach. No distractions. Her professor let her take a makeup exam. Harrison sent flowers to the man's office as a thank you. The kind of gesture that seemed romantic at the time. The kind of gesture that would later feel like a warning she'd ignored. 1 semester from graduation, Monique Patterson started saying yes to Harrison Fletcher. And she wouldn't learn how to say no until it was far too late. He didn't cage her all at once. No, Harrison was smarter than that. He removed 1 bar at a time. So slowly she didn't notice the walls closing in, until she couldn't remember what freedom felt like. 6 months after that night in the parking garage, Harrison proposed. They were in Paris, the Eiffel Tower sparkling behind them. A 5-carat diamond catching the light as he dropped to one knee. Marry me, he said. Let me give you the world. She said yes, before he finished the sentence. The engagement was a whirlwind. Magazine features, society page announcements, a penthouse apartment in D.C. that Harrison bought in cash the week after she accepted his ring. Everything moved so fast that Monique barely had time to think. Maybe that was the point. The first request came softly, wrapped in silk, and presented like a gift. Baby. Harrison murmured one night, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Why would my wife need to work? Why would my wife need a law degree when I can give her everything? I want to finish, Monique said. I'm so close. Just 1 more semester. Of course, his smile never wavered. But think about it. No more exhaustion. No more stress. No more serving drinks to people who don't deserve to breathe the same air as you. I can take care of you, Monique. Let me. She told herself she'd think about it. Just think. A week later, her mother came to visit the penthouse for the first time. Lorraine Patterson walked through those marble rooms with her lips pressed tight, ran her fingers over furniture that cost more than her teacher's pension, looked at her daughter in designer clothes she didn't pick out herself. And when Harrison left for a meeting, Lorraine sat Monique down in that gleaming kitchen and spoke the truth nobody else would say. Baby, when a man asks you to shrink so he can feel bigger, that's not love, that's ownership. Mama, you don't know him like I do. He just wants to take care of me. Child. Lorraine's eyes were hard with 62 years of wisdom. I've been black and female in America my whole life. I know exactly what a man looks like when he's building a cage and calling it a castle. The argument that followed was the worst they'd ever had. Monique said things she'd regret for years, called her mother jealous, small-minded, unable to understand what real love looked like. Lorraine left with tears streaming down her face. And that night, Harrison made everything better. He held Monique while she cried, stroked her hair, whispered that her mother just didn't understand their connection, that some people couldn't recognize true love because they'd never experienced it themselves. She'll come around, he promised, once she sees how happy we are. Then he carried her to bed. Their physical relationship had always been intense. But that night, Harrison was something else entirely. Passionate, attentive, making her feel desired in ways that erased every doubt, every worry, every warning her mother had tried to plant. That night, after her mother left with tears in her eyes, Harrison spent hours making Monique forget everything except his name on her lips. It worked. It always worked. Here's what I need you to understand. Women like Monique aren't weak. They're not stupid. They're targeted. Men like Harrison don't choose women they can't manipulate. They choose women who have so much light that it's worth the effort to dim it. Has someone ever made you feel like your dreams were smaller than their comfort? Tell me in the comments. 2 weeks later, Monique withdrew from Howard University Law School, 1 semester short of graduation. She told herself she could always go back, finish later, that love was more important than a career, that Harrison would support whatever she decided. She told herself a lot of things in those days. Their engagement party filled the penthouse with senators, oil executives, and women in designer gowns who looked at Monique like she was a stray Harrison had brought home from the shelter. She smiled until her face ached, laughed at jokes she didn't understand, and when Harrison's hand found the small of her back, possessive and steering, she told herself it felt like protection instead of ownership. The wedding was beautiful, 300 guests, a 12-tier cake, coverage in 3 magazines. Monique wore a custom Vera Wang gown that took 6 months to make. She walked down an aisle covered in white rose petals toward the man who promised her the world. Her mother sat in the front row with dry eyes while everyone else cried. Because Lorraine Patterson knew something all those weeping socialites didn't. Her daughter wasn't walking down the aisle toward a new life. She was walking into a very elegant grave. The Hamptons mansion had 14 rooms, a private beach, and not a single corner where Monique felt like she belonged. By year 3 of her marriage, she had become exactly what Harrison wanted, the perfect trophy wife. Elegant at galas, silent in boardrooms, invisible whenever he needed her to be. Her days followed a script she hadn't written. Morning yoga with an instructor Harrison hired. Lunch with the wives of his business partners at restaurants, where a salad cost $50. Afternoon shopping for clothes she didn't need. Evening dinner parties where she smiled and nodded and pretended to care about stock prices and golf handicaps. She hosted, she performed, she smiled on cue, and she waited. That's what her life had become, waiting. For Harrison to come home from work, for Harrison to finish his phone call, for Harrison to remember she existed. The fishing trips started in their 2nd year of marriage. I need this, Harrison explained. Time to decompress. The cabin in the Adirondacks. Just me and the lake. No phones, no meetings, no distractions. You understand, don't you, baby? She understood. What she didn't understand was why he came back from roughing it in the wilderness with freshly manicured nails. Why there was never any fish. Why his clothes sometimes carried a faint perfume he claimed came from the lodge's complimentary toiletries. She didn't understand why he always refused to let her come along. It's my sacred time, he said whenever she asked. Every man needs space. You wouldn't want to take that from me, would you? The mansion's marble floors echoed with every step she took alone. 14 rooms, and Monique had somehow shrunk herself, small enough to fit in just one. The window seat in the library, where she'd stare at the ocean and try to remember the girl who used to highlight case law until 3 in the morning. The girl who had plans that didn't include waiting by the door like a well-dressed ghost. She brought up starting a family. Surely that would fix things. Give her purpose. Give them something to build together. Harrison deflected every time. Not yet, baby. The timing isn't right. Let's wait until Fletcher Industries stabilizes. Always a reason. Always later. Always not now. I need you to see what Monique couldn't see yet. She was being gaslit so smoothly, that she blamed herself for feeling empty in a mansion full of everything except love. How many of you have felt crazy for noticing something everyone else told you wasn't there? This is for you. Their physical intimacy, once the fire that consumed them both, had become something else entirely, infrequent, mechanical. Harrison claiming exhaustion from work, while Monique lay awake afterward feeling lonelier than before he touched her. He still reached for her some nights, but his hands moved like they were checking boxes on a list. When she arched into him, searching for the passion that used to consume them both, he finished quickly and rolled away like she was a task he'd completed. She found herself fantasizing. Not about other men, but about being desired. The way Harrison used to desire her. Before she became furniture in his carefully designed life. One night, she tried to talk to him. Really talk. "When's the last time we talked about something real?" she asked. "About us?" Harrison didn't look up from his phone. "We're talking right now." "No, you're managing me. There's a difference." A long pause. His jaw tightened. Then the charming smile returned, smooth as ever. "You're being dramatic. I'll have Rosa draw you a bath." That was his answer to everything. A bath, a shopping trip, a piece of jewelry, anything to avoid actually seeing her. On the morning of their 4th anniversary, Monique found something that should have told her everything. A receipt in Harrison's jacket pocket. Not for fishing gear, for a children's toy store in Lake Placid. 2 items purchased, a small baseball glove, and a pink tutu. She stared at that receipt for 10 full minutes, heart pounding, hands shaking, mind racing through explanations that didn't make sense. A gift for a colleague's child. A charity donation. Anything except the truth. After all, Harrison was many things. Distant. Controlling. Impossible to reach. But he wasn't a liar. At least, that's what she needed to believe, to survive another day in that beautiful, suffocating house. The pregnancy test was supposed to save her marriage. Instead, it would burn it to the ground. By year 5, Monique was 29 years old and running out of reasons to get out of bed. The woman who once dreamed of arguing cases before the Supreme Court now couldn't remember the last time she'd had a conversation that mattered. The woman who once believed she could change the world now wondered if she'd ever change anything again. She needed something, anything, a reason to feel alive. So she stopped taking her birth control pills. Not to trap Harrison, she knew that wouldn't work anyway. A man who wanted out would find a way out, baby or no baby. She stopped because she needed something that was hers. A purpose that had nothing to do with being Harrison Fletcher's wife. She didn't tell him, didn't ask permission. And that small rebellion, that tiny act of deciding something for herself, felt more exciting than anything had in years. 3 weeks later, alone in their master bathroom at 6 in the morning, she watched 2 pink lines appear on a test that would change everything. The bathroom counter was cold against her palms as she watched the second line materialize. Faint at first, then undeniable. Pink like promise, pink like sunrise after 5 years of night. Monique pressed her hand against her stomach, still flat, still holding a secret the size of her entire future. And for the first time since she dropped out of law school, she felt like herself. Like the woman who used to believe she could change the world. Before she settled for changing nothing but her husband's sheets, she decided not to tell Harrison over the phone. This news deserved his face, his presence, his full attention. This news would remind him why he chose her. Would reignite whatever had died between them, would give them a reason to become the couple they used to be. At least, that's what she told herself. She called her mother, unable to contain all of her joy. "Baby, you're glowing through the phone," Lorraine said. "What's going on?" "I can't tell you yet, Mama, but I think things are finally going to get better." A long pause. The kind of pause that held everything Lorraine wanted to say, but knew her daughter wouldn't hear. "I hope you're right, sweetheart. Lord knows I hope you're right." She thought a baby would fix everything. And I know some of you are already shaking your heads, because you've lived this. You've seen someone believe that a child could save a relationship that was already dead. But here's the thing. Monique wasn't just hoping for a baby. She was hoping to feel alive again. Have you ever put all your hope into something that couldn't possibly hold that weight? The plan came together quickly. Harrison was at the cabin for his monthly fishing trip. 4 days of sacred alone time that she wasn't supposed to interrupt under any circumstances. but surely he'd understand. Surely this news was worth breaking his one rule. She bought champagne. His favorite. The expensive kind from that vineyard they'd visited on their honeymoon. She bought tiny fishing boots, size newborn, wrapped them in ribbon with a note that said, "Coming soon." She packed lingerie she hadn't worn in years. A silky emerald thing Harrison once said made her look like sin wrapped in money. She'd tell him about the baby, and then she'd remind him why he chose her. She'd make him remember. If you're still here, you already know this drive to the cabin isn't going to end well. But I promise you, what Monique finds is worse than anything you're imagining. Subscribe if you haven't already, because the next chapter changes everything. At 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October, Monique Patterson backed her Mercedes out of the Hamptons driveway, with champagne in the cooler, tiny fishing boots on the passenger seat, and a secret growing in her belly. 6 hours later, standing in a gravel driveway in the Adirondacks with mascara running down her face, she would have a different secret entirely. One that would turn her heartbreak into something far more dangerous. A plan. She heard them before she saw them. Children laughing. The sound was so foreign to her marriage that for a moment, Monique thought she'd driven to the wrong cabin. She checked the GPS 3 times. This was definitely the address Harrison had given her years ago. The address she'd never been allowed to visit. The address that was supposed to contain nothing but her husband, a fishing pole, and silence. But that sound coming through the trees wasn't silence. It was a family. The drive had taken 6 hours. 6 hours of winding mountain roads, autumn leaves painting the hills in fire colors. And Monique, rehearsing her announcement in the rearview mirror. "Surprise, baby, we're pregnant. Harrison, you're going to be a father. I know I wasn't supposed to come, but I have news that couldn't wait." 6 hours of imagining his face lighting up, his arms wrapping around her, the old Harrison returning, the one who used to look at her like she was magic. 6 hours of convincing herself that a baby would fix everything. The cabin sat against the lake like a postcard lie. Smoke curled from the chimney, windows glowed warm against the October chill. It was larger than Harrison had described. Much larger. Not a rustic fishing retreat, but a proper house. The kind of house where a family might live. Monique's heels crunched on the gravel as she approached, champagne bottle sweating in her hand, smile ready on her lips. She was thinking about Harrison's face when he saw the tiny boots. She was thinking about how their child would have his eyes and her determination. She was thinking about everything except the laughter coming from inside. High and bright and young. Children's laughter. In a cabin her husband swore he visited alone. She should have left then, should have gotten back in her car and driven away, should have called a lawyer before calling her mother, should have done anything except what she did. She walked to the window and looked inside. Harrison sat at a breakfast table. Sunlight streaming through the glass made his silver-streaked hair glow. He was smiling. Not the controlled smile he gave at business dinners, or the patient smile he gave Monique when she asked too many questions. A real smile. A happy smile. He was smiling at a woman. Blonde, beautiful, maybe 5 years older than Monique. Wearing a cozy sweater and no makeup. Comfortable in a way that spoke of years, not weeks. And between them, 2 children. A boy around 6 years old, with Harrison's exact jaw and the same way of tilting his head when he laughed. A girl around 4, with Harrison's unmistakable green eyes, the ones Monique had fallen in love with across a crowded ballroom 7 years ago. His children. Harrison's children. The ones he'd already had while telling Monique the timing wasn't right. 15 seconds. That's how long Monique stood frozen in that driveway, staring at the family portrait that existed without her. 15 seconds to realize her entire marriage was a performance. Her husband was a stranger, and the life growing inside her would be born into chaos. What would you do with those 15 seconds? Would you scream, run, or would you do what Monique did, go completely, dangerously still? Through the window, she heard Harrison's voice clearly. "I'm going to leave her after the Fletcher Industries deal closes. You and the kids will finally have everything I promised." The blonde woman, the first wife, sighed. "You said that last year." Harrison. Camden's starting to ask questions. He wants to know why Daddy can't come to his school plays. "Soon, baby, I promise. Just a few more months and we can finally be a real family." A real family. The words hit Monique like a physical blow. She staggered backward, and her heel caught on a branch. The crack echoed through the quiet morning like a gunshot. Harrison's head snapped toward the window, and Monique watched 5 years of carefully constructed lies crumble behind his green eyes. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her through the glass like she was the intruder. Like she was the one who'd done something wrong by showing up in her own husband's life unannounced. She thought about the nights he'd come home from these trips and reach for her in the dark. Now she understood why his touch had felt so different. Perfunctory. Obligatory. She wasn't his passion. She was his cover story. Every kiss had been a lie wearing lipstick. The front door opened. Harrison stepped onto the porch. Behind him, the blonde woman appeared in the doorway, confused. Looking between Harrison and the stranger in the driveway with growing horror, Monique could have collapsed, could have screamed accusations, demanded explanations, made the kind of scene Harrison always accused her of being capable of, could have done what society expects from scorned women, fall apart, become the hysterical wife who couldn't handle the truth. But something strange happened in those seconds. The grief didn't come. The tears dried before they fell. Instead, a cold clarity settled over her, the kind of calm that arrives when you've finally stopped lying to yourself, when the worst has already happened and there's nothing left to fear. She looked past Harrison entirely. Looked at the other woman, the first wife, the hidden family's mother, a woman who was staring at Monique's designer clothes and pregnant belly with confusion that was rapidly turning to understanding. And Monique asked 6 words that would change everything. "Did you know about me?" Bethany Sinclair's face crumpled. Not with guilt, with horror. The same horror Monique felt. The horror of realizing you'd given your life to a man who never existed. The horror of understanding that you weren't special. You were just next in line. "Who are you?" Bethany whispered. "I'm his wife," Monique said. "His other wife. And I'm guessing he told you the same lies he told me." Behind them, Harrison finally spoke. "Monique, let me explain." But neither woman was listening to him anymore. They were looking at each other. 2 strangers connected by the same betrayal. 2 victims of the same predator. 2 women who had every reason to hate each other and no reason at all. Because in that moment, standing in a driveway between 2 lives that were never supposed to collide, Monique Patterson understood something that Harrison hadn't counted on. She wasn't his only victim. And victims who find each other don't stay victims for long. They become something far more dangerous. They become allies. "My beautiful family, my wife challenged me that I can't get 1,000 subscribers, but I want you to prove her wrong by clicking the subscribe button." 2 women, 1 lying husband, and a driveway where the only thing more shocking than the betrayal was what happened next. They didn't fight each other. They sat down and compared notes. Harrison stood frozen in the cabin doorway, caught between 2 lives that were never supposed to collide. His mouth opened and closed like a fish pulled from water. For 14 years, he'd managed this secret, kept these 2 worlds spinning on separate axes. And now, they were crashing together, and he had no script for this moment. "This isn't what it looks like," he finally said. Both women laughed. Not happy laughter. The kind that comes out when the alternative is screaming. The kind that says you've heard that exact phrase before, in movies, in stories about other women's cheating husbands, and you never thought you'd hear it in your own life. "Harrison." Bethany's voice was ice. "Our children are inside. Your children. The ones I've been raising alone for 6 years while you told me you were building our future." "Beth, baby, let me explain." "Don't call me baby." Bethany turned to Monique, and something shifted in her expression. The fury was still there. But it wasn't pointed at the stranger in her driveway. It was pointed at the man they'd both trusted. 5 years, Monique said. Big ceremony. 300 guests. I have the marriage certificate in a safe deposit box. Bethany closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet, but steady. I have one too. 14 years ago. Secret ceremony. He said his family wouldn't accept me. Behind them, Harrison's voice rose. Both of you, stop. Just stop and let me. Rosa. Bethany cut him off without looking at him. The housekeeper had appeared in the doorway. Confusion written across her face. Please take Camden and Iris to the playroom. Close the door. Turn on a movie. They don't need to hear any of this. Rosa nodded quickly, shepherding the children away from the chaos their father had created. The boy Camden, Harrison's son, with Harrison's jaw, looked back once with worried eyes, before disappearing inside. Harrison tried again. Monique, sweetheart, whatever she's told you. She hasn't told me anything. Monique's voice surprised her. Steady, cold, nothing like the woman who'd been shaking 10 minutes ago. I watched you through that window, Harrison. I heard you promise to leave me. I saw your children. The ones you kept telling me we weren't ready for. That's not I can explain all of this, if you'll just explain it to my lawyer. The words came out before Monique knew she was going to say them. But they felt right. They felt like the first true thing she'd said in years. Bethany looked at her, really looked. And in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the silent communication of two women who'd been promised the same lies by the same mouth. My car, Bethany said quietly. We should talk. Away from him. Monique nodded. They walked together toward the Range Rover, parked at the edge of the property. Behind them, Harrison's voice followed, growing more desperate with every step they took away from him. Monique, Beth, you can't just, this is insane. Come back here and let me. Neither woman turned around. Bethany's Range Rover sat at the edge of the property like an escape pod. The two women climbed inside without speaking, closing doors on the chaos behind them. Through the tinted windows, they watched Harrison pace the porch, phone pressed to his ear, already calling lawyers, already strategizing, already treating this like a business problem to be managed. He hadn't even asked if Monique was okay, hadn't even looked at her stomach where his child, his third child, was growing without his knowledge or care. How long have you known? Bethany asked, staring straight ahead. About you? 20 minutes. About him being a liar? Monique thought about it. Really thought. Longer than I wanted to admit. The silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable. Processing. He told me the business trips were exhausting, Bethany said finally. Her voice barely above a whisper. That's why he was never really present. Even when he was home, he was somewhere else. I thought it was stress. I thought maybe I'd become boring. That I wasn't enough. Monique understood perfectly. She'd blamed herself for the same distance. Wondered if she'd lost her appeal, if 5 years of marriage had made her invisible. He proposed to me in Paris, Monique said. Said I was the first woman who ever made him feel like himself. Bethany's laugh was hollow. Paris. The same hotel, I'm guessing? The one with the view of the Eiffel Tower from the balcony? Monique's stomach dropped. Yes. He proposed to me there too, 14 years ago. Bethany shook her head slowly. I found the credit card statement years later. 2 identical charges. 6 months apart? Same room. Same ring. Same speech, probably. Every kiss had been a script. Every promise had been recycled. Every moment Monique thought was special had been performed before, with another woman, in the same hotel room. Here's what Harrison didn't count on. Women talk. We compare notes. We believe each other even when men tell us we're crazy. The moment Monique and Bethany chose to sit in that car together instead of tearing each other apart, Harrison Fletcher lost control of a narrative he'd been writing for 14 years. Have you ever found out someone else shared your exact same pain? That moment of discovering you weren't alone? Drop a comment if you've lived it. I'm pregnant, Monique said. The words fell out of her like stones. Bethany turned to look at her. Really look. Taking in the flat stomach, the exhausted eyes. The woman who'd driven 6 hours to share news that would now be born into chaos. Oh, honey, Bethany breathed. How far along? 8 weeks. I found out this morning. That's why I came. To surprise him. The laugh that escaped Monique's throat was more like a sob. Surprise. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Outside, Harrison had stopped pacing. He stood on the porch, watching their car with narrowed eyes, phone still pressed to his ear. Planning. Always planning. He has secrets beyond us, Bethany said suddenly. She reached beneath her seat and pulled out a manila folder. Thick with documents. I've been collecting for 2 years. Bank statements that don't add up. Shell companies in the Caymans. Transfers to accounts that don't exist on any Fletcher Industries ledger. Monique stared at the folder. What are you saying? I'm saying I was going to use this to negotiate a divorce. Get what I deserved after 14 years of lies. Bethany handed her the folder. But now, with you here, I think we can do something better. Monique opened the folder. The first page made her blood run cold. It wasn't just infidelity Harrison was hiding. It was fraud. And fraud meant prison. Revenge isn't built on anger. It's built on evidence. And Bethany Sinclair had been collecting receipts for 2 years. Literal ones. The diner was 30 miles from the cabin. Far enough that Harrison wouldn't think to look for them there. Close enough that Monique's hands were still shaking when she spread the documents across the sticky formica table. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old secrets. Truckers hunched over plates of eggs at the counter. A waitress with tired eyes refilled their cups without asking questions. The kind of diner where people came to disappear, at least for a little while. "Walk me through this," Monique said, her law school training kicking in despite the 5-year gap. "Start from the beginning." Bethany kept watch on the parking lot through the window. 2 years ago, Harrison told me we needed to cut back on household expenses. Said Fletcher Industries was going through a rough patch. Temporary cash flow issues. But I saw the quarterly reports. The company was doing better than ever. Record profits. So I started paying attention to where the money was actually going. Monique flipped through the pages. Wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Shell companies with names that meant nothing. Forged signatures on documents that should have had board approval. "This is embezzlement," she said slowly. "This is securities fraud. This is prison," Bethany finished. "If we can prove it." The diner smelled like burnt coffee and old secrets. Monique spread the documents across the sticky formica table, while Bethany kept watch on the parking lot. Both of them operating on instincts they didn't know they had. Outside, autumn leaves skittered across cracked pavement. But they were done running. Done shrinking. Done being the supporting characters in Harrison Fletcher's story. "He's been moving money for years," Monique said, tracing the paper trail with her finger. "These shell companies. They're all connected. Same naming convention, same bank, same signature style." "Arrogant," Bethany agreed. "He never thought anyone would look." "The Fletcher Industries deal he mentioned." Monique looked up. "The one he said would close before he left me. I don't think it's about growth. I think it's about liquidation." "You think he's planning to run?" "I think he's been planning to run for years. Building an escape route, hiding assets where no one could trace them." Monique pointed to a transfer dated 6 months ago. "This one, $12 million to an account that doesn't appear on any company filing. That's not a business expense. That's a getaway fund." Among the documents, Monique found hotel receipts. Miami, Tokyo, London. Bethany had assumed they were affairs. Other women Harrison was entertaining on his business trips. But looking closer, Monique recognized some of the names attached to those meetings. Board members, investors, the kind of people who wouldn't normally meet in hotel suites instead of conference rooms. "He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world," Monique murmured, studying a receipt from a hotel she'd never heard of. "That was his gift, wasn't it? Making us feel special while we were actually just convenient." Bethany nodded slowly. "He proposed to me in Paris. Same hotel, same speech. I found the credit card statement years later. 2 identical charges, 6 months apart. Harrison used intimacy like a business tool. With his wives, with his partners, with anyone who could be manipulated through desire or trust." "We need help," Monique said finally. "Someone who can verify all of this, make it stick. A forensic accountant? Or a lawyer? Someone who knows how to turn evidence into ammunition." Bethany was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. Small, but real. "My brother's ex-wife, Celeste. She's a forensic accountant. Specializes in divorce cases where the husband tries to hide assets. Will she help us? She hates rich men who lie about money. I think she'll be very motivated." This is the part most revenge stories skip over. The boring work, the paper trails, the receipts and statements and account numbers that don't mean anything until they mean everything. But here's the truth. You can't destroy a man like Harrison Fletcher with anger. You can only destroy him with evidence. What would you do if you suddenly had proof that someone who hurt you had been breaking the law? Would you take it to the authorities? Or would you want something more personal? We're about to meet the woman who's going to help Monique and Bethany tear Harrison Fletcher's empire apart piece by piece. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're about to miss the part where this story goes from heartbreak to heist. Don't say I didn't warn you. Monique's phone buzzed on the table. Harrison's name on the screen. She showed Bethany, finger hovering over decline. But Bethany grabbed her wrist. Answer it. Put it on speaker. Let's hear how he spins this. Monique accepted the call. Harrison's voice filled the diner. Smooth as ever. Already rewriting reality. Baby, I can explain everything. Just come home. We can work this out. You know I love you. Bethany mouthed 3 words. Monique repeated them out loud before hanging up. Prove it, liar. Celeste Whitmore had made a career out of finding the money men tried to hide from the women they'd destroyed. When Bethany called with Harrison Fletcher's name, Celeste didn't just agree to help. She cleared her calendar. Her Brooklyn office occupied the top floor of a converted brownstone. The kind of building that looked warm and inviting from the outside, but held sharp edges within. Monique noticed the filing cabinets first. Dozens of them, each labeled with names she recognized from society pages and business sections. Men who'd walked into this room powerful and walked out broken. Ladies. Celeste was tall, dark-skinned, with silver streaks in her natural hair, and the kind of glasses that made her look like she could see through walls. Show me what you have. Bethany handed over the folder. Celeste spread the documents across her desk, with practiced efficiency. Her expression shifting as she read. Professional interest became focus. Focus became something that looked almost like hunger. Your husband is very bad at crime, she said finally. Same shell company naming convention for every account. Same bank in the Caymans. Same forged signature style. She looked up at them. Arrogant men always think they're smarter than the paper trail. Celeste's office was a war room, dressed as a brownstone study. Mahogany shelves lined with financial textbooks stood beside filing cabinets, labeled with names Monique recognized from society pages. Men who'd entered this room powerful and left broken. The afternoon light caught dust motes floating between the women like witnesses to the alliance forming. 3 strangers connected by one man's lies, about to become his worst nightmare. How bad is it? Bethany asked. Bad. Celeste leaned back in her chair. He's not just hiding assets from you. He's hiding them from the IRS. From the SEC. From his own board of directors. We're talking securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. $40 million minimum. 40 million? Monique felt dizzy. That's a conservative estimate. Could be more. The shell companies are layered deep. But here's the thing about layers. Celeste smiled. They all have to connect somewhere. And your husband made the mistake of connecting them to his personal accounts. So what are our options? Monique asked. Celeste tapped her pen against the desk. Option 1. We hand everything over to the authorities. SEC, IRS, FBI. Watch him burn from the outside while federal prosecutors build their case. And option 2? We use this as leverage. Negotiate divorce terms that leave both of you financially secure for life, while Harrison scrambles to stay out of prison. Is there an option 3? Celeste's smile widened. We do both, slowly, and we make sure he knows exactly who's holding the match. There was something intoxicating about watching Celeste trace the money. About seeing Harrison's carefully constructed empire reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet that could be handed to federal prosecutors. Monique caught Bethany's eye across the desk and saw her own hunger reflected back. Not for revenge exactly. For reclamation. For the right to exist in spaces they'd been trained to shrink within. Every woman who's been told to just move on, to take the high road, to be the bigger person this chapter is for you. Because sometimes the high road is paved with evidence and lawyers. Sometimes, being the bigger person means becoming too big for them to ignore. Which option would you choose? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know if you're feeling merciful or if you want Harrison to suffer. There's one more thing, Celeste said. She pulled up a file on her computer. The largest transfers. About 12 million. They went to an account in the Cayman Islands registered to someone named Vivian Ashford. Bethany frowned. I don't know that name. Neither did Monique. Celeste turned the screen around to show them a photograph. Account verification documents required a photo ID. And staring back at them from the screen was a woman. Young, beautiful, hand resting on a very pregnant belly. Monique stopped breathing. Oh my God, she whispered. Bethany's face went white. There's another one, Celeste confirmed. Your husband doesn't just have 2 families. He has 3. 2 wives were a scandal. 3 was a pattern. And patterns, Celeste explained with cold satisfaction, were what sent men to prison. Vivian Ashford, 26 years old, former executive assistant at Fletcher Industries, currently living in a Miami penthouse owned by a shell company that traced back to Harrison's hidden accounts, 8 months pregnant. Harrison's third concurrent family. The photograph showed her on a balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay, hand resting on her swollen stomach, smile bright and trusting and so achingly familiar that Monique had to look away. She remembered being that happy, that certain, that convinced she'd found the love story other women only dreamed about. The picture was dated 3 weeks ago. In 3 weeks, Vivian's entire world would be ashes. Unless they reached her first. Here's what I'm seeing, Celeste said, spreading photographs and documents across her desk. He acquires women like assets. Young, impressive, isolated from family or resources. He gives them just enough to feel dependent, then manages them like a portfolio. He acquired me at 19, Bethany said quietly. Told me my family wasn't good enough to know about us. He got me at 24, Monique added. Made me drop out of law school so I'd have no career to fall back on. And Vivian was his executive assistant, already in his orbit, already conditioned to see him as powerful. Celeste shook her head. She's not his affair. She's his next acquisition. The women pieced together Harrison's schedule. How he managed 3 households, 3 beds, 3 sets of expectations. It required military precision, separate phones, separate credit cards, separate lies tailored to separate wounds. He told me I was his fresh start, Monique said, that his first marriage had been a mistake, that I was the woman who finally made him feel whole. Bethany's laugh was hollow. He told me you were a business arrangement, a marriage of convenience to satisfy his family's image requirements, that he loved me, only me, and eventually, we'd be together publicly. They sat with that. The different lies, crafted for different women, the precision of his manipulation. Every whispered promise had been copy and paste. Every tender moment had been rehearsed, repeated, recycled. 3 women. 3 different lies. One predator who thought he could keep all his plates spinning forever. I need you to understand something. Men like Harrison don't see women as people. They see us as problems to be managed, assets to be acquired, resources to be depleted. And they're not rare. They're everywhere, hiding behind charm and money and promises that sound like love. If you've ever met someone like Harrison, drop a comment. Let's build a thread of survival stories. We have to warn her, Monique said. She won't believe us, Bethany replied. I wouldn't have believed us. Then, we bring proof. And we let her decide what to do with it. I'll go, Monique volunteered. I'm the newest, the least threatening. And I know exactly what it feels like to have your world destroyed in an instant. The flight to Miami left the next morning. Monique spent the night in Bethany's guest room. Neither of them could sleep, not in homes Harrison had paid for with stolen money and borrowed time. At 3 a.m., Monique's phone lit up. Not Harrison this time. A text from an unknown number. 6 words that stopped her heart. I know what you're planning. She showed Bethany. Both of them frozen in the blue glow of the screen. Someone else knew about their investigation. The only question was whether they were friend, foe, or Harrison himself, finally realizing his wives had become his enemies. Vivian Ashford answered the door with one hand on her pregnant belly and suspicion in her eyes. She looked at Monique and said 4 words that proved Harrison's playbook never changed. Did he send you? Monique almost laughed. Almost, because the question was so familiar it hurt. No, she said. He doesn't know I'm here. Can I come in? I have something to show you. Something you need to see. Vivian hesitated. She was younger than Monique expected. Softer. The kind of beautiful that made men want to protect her and women want to be her friend. The kind of beautiful Harrison collected. I don't know you, Vivian said carefully. My name is Monique Patterson Fletcher. She watched Vivian's face for recognition and found none. I'm Harrison's wife. Vivian's expression hardened. Harrison isn't married. His divorce was finalized years ago. He told me. He told you what you needed to hear. Just like he told me. Just like he told the woman before both of us. I think you should leave. I'm pregnant too. Monique put her hand on her own stomach. Still flat but holding the future nonetheless. 8 weeks. I found out the morning I discovered you existed. Please, just look at what I brought. And then, I'll go. I promise. Something in Vivian's face shifted. Not belief. Not yet. But curiosity. The same curiosity that had probably gotten her into Harrison's orbit in the first place. She stepped aside. The penthouse was everything Harrison's taste demanded. White marble, ocean views. Fresh flowers that cost more than Vivian's monthly student loan payments used to be. Monique knew this because she knew Harrison. Knew he furnished all his women's homes the same way. Knew this apartment was a copy of a copy, just like his promises. Vivian stood in the center of it like an exhibit in a museum of deception. Monique handed her the folder. At first, Vivian flipped through the pages with defensive anger, ready to dismiss everything as the ravings of a jealous ex. But then she reached the photographs. Harrison with Camden and Iris at a school play, 2 months ago. The same weekend he told Vivian he was in Tokyo for business. Harrison and Bethany's wedding photo. 14 years old but undeniably real. Harrison and Monique's wedding photo. 5 years old, magazine coverage included. Vivian's hands started shaking. This can't, he said. Her voice cracked. He said I was the only one, that his ex-wife was crazy, obsessive, making up lies to destroy him. I know, Monique said gently. He told me the same thing. About a woman named Bethany, who I'd never met. He said I was the only one who truly understood him, Vivian whispered. That his marriages, plural, apparently were just obligation. He told me the same thing about Bethany, that she was a mistake from his past. The door opened behind them. Bethany stepped inside. She'd been waiting in the car, watching through the building's security cameras on Celeste's tablet. When Vivian didn't throw Monique out, she knew it was time. And he told me, Bethany said, that both of you were inventions of jealous business rivals trying to destroy him. Vivian looked between them. 2 women she'd never met, 2 women who should have been her enemies. 2 women looking at her with nothing but understanding. He said I was the only one who truly understood him, Vivian repeated, more to herself than to them. Mascara tracked down her cheeks as the truth finally broke through her denial. When she looked up at Monique, she didn't ask if it was true. Women always know. They just convince themselves not to believe. How? Vivian asked. How did we all fall for the same lies? Because he's good at it, Bethany answered. Because we wanted to believe. Because women are taught to doubt themselves before they doubt the men who say they love us. What do we do now? Celeste's voice came from the doorway. She'd come up behind Bethany, unable to wait any longer. Now, we make sure he never does this to anyone else. And we make sure all of you and all of these children are taken care of, not by him, by the money he tried to hide. 4 women in a hospital waiting room. 2 of them pregnant by the same lying man. All of them finally seeing the full picture of who Harrison Fletcher really was. This isn't just a story about cheating. It's about systematic predation dressed up as love. It's about women who were smart, capable, valuable, and still got fooled. Because that's what predators do. They're not looking for stupid victims. They're looking for trusting ones. If you've ever blamed yourself for believing someone's lies, this is your reminder. The shame belongs to the liar, not to you. The contraction hit Vivian without warning. She doubled over, clutching her stomach, and Monique caught her before she could fall. The baby, Vivian gasped. Something's wrong. It's too early. It's not supposed to. Hospital, Celeste commanded. Now. They rushed to the elevator. By the time they reached the lobby, Vivian was gripping Monique's hand hard enough to leave bruises. The stress had triggered labor 3 weeks early. Another thing Harrison had broken without even being present. The contractions got worse in the car. By the time they reached Mount Sinai, Vivian was screaming. Vivian's baby is about to be born. The evidence is compiled, and Harrison Fletcher has no idea that his 3 wives are now 4 women with 1 mission. If you're not subscribed, you're about to miss the revenge you've been waiting for. 3 more chapters. 3 more chances to watch a predator fall. Don't miss it. The delivery took 4 hours. Bethany was on the phone with lawyers the entire time, making sure custody arrangements were already in motion before Harrison could try to claim rights to a child he'd hidden from the world. Celeste was coordinating with contacts at the SEC, laying groundwork for the investigation that would destroy everything Harrison had built. And Monique held Vivian's hand through every contraction. Because she knew exactly how terrifying it was to bring a child into chaos. Because in 8 months, she'd be doing the same thing. At 11:47 p.m., the baby arrived. A girl, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, healthy despite the early arrival. Vivian looked at the tiny face with exhausted, fierce love. "Justice," she said. "Her name is Justice." "Why Justice?" Monique asked. Vivian looked at the 3 women who'd become her sisters in the span of a single devastating day. "Because that's what we're about to get." In the hallway, Celeste's phone rang. She answered, listened, and her face went pale. "Harrison knows," she said when she hung up. "He knows Vivian talked to us. He's on his way to Miami." The women looked at each other. They had maybe 6 hours before he arrived. 6 hours to decide. Run, hide, or stand their ground and finally make him face what he'd done. Harrison Fletcher walked into that hospital, expecting to find one frightened pregnant mistress he could silence with money and threats. Instead, he found 4 women sitting in a row, like a jury that had already reached its verdict. The private recovery suite at Mount Sinai smelled like antiseptic and formula and the end of Harrison Fletcher's carefully constructed empire. He stood in the doorway in a $3,000 suit, freshly chartered from New York, expecting submission. What he found was 4 pairs of eyes that held nothing but contempt. Monique sat closest to the door. Next to her, Bethany. Then Celeste with a legal pad balanced on her knee, pen ready. And in the hospital bed, Vivian held baby Justice against her chest, tiny fingers curled around her mother's hospital gown. Harrison's smile appeared automatically. The charming smile, the one that had worked on all of them at various points in their lives. It faltered when no one smiled back. Reset. Faltered again. For the first time in his adult life, charm wasn't going to save him. "Ladies," he said, spreading his hands in a gesture meant to look reasonable. "This has all gotten very out of hand. If we could just talk like adults." "We are talking like adults," Bethany interrupted. "That's the problem. We compared notes, Harrison, all of us, for hours. Whatever she's told you," he pointed at Monique. "Whatever any of them have told you, it's not the full picture. This is a misunderstanding. A complicated situation that I was trying to resolve quietly." "Which wife were you planning to resolve first?" Celeste asked. Her voice was ice. "The one you married 14 years ago? The one from 5 years ago? Or the one carrying your 3rd child?" Harrison's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" "Celeste Whitmore. Forensic accountant. Specializing in divorce cases where the husband thinks he's smarter than the paper trail." She smiled. "Spoiler alert. He never is." He stepped toward Monique first. Always her. The newest acquisition. The one he thought was still moldable. "Baby," he murmured, reaching for her hand. "You know I love you, whatever they've told you." She pulled back before his fingers touched her skin. "Don't." The single word held 5 years of stolen dreams, 5 years of shrinking, 5 years of believing she was the problem. "You don't get to touch me anymore. You don't get to call me baby. You don't get to do anything except listen." This is the moment every woman who's ever been gaslit dreams about. The moment the man who made you feel crazy, who made you doubt your own reality, who made you shrink yourself to fit his comfort, finally has to face what he did. No charm, no escape, no more lies that work. Have you ever had a moment like this? A moment where you finally stood your ground and watched someone realize they couldn't manipulate you anymore? Tell me about it in the comments. Harrison's expression shifted. The charm didn't work, so he tried something else. Anger. "This is insane. You're all being manipulated. Bethany, you know me. 14 years. 14 years of lies." Bethany stood up. She was taller than him in her heels, and she used every inch. 14 years of wondering why I wasn't enough. 14 years of being your secret while you built a public life with someone else. "Vivian, sweetheart," he turned to the hospital bed. "I was going to tell you everything. I was working out the timing. You told me my daughter would have her father's last name." Vivian's voice was hoarse from labor, but steady. "Which last name, Harrison? The one on your first marriage certificate, or your second? This is hormones talking." He tried Monique again. "You're pregnant? You're emotional?" End quote. "I'm clear for the first time in 5 years, and you're going to prison. You have no idea who you're threatening." Celeste looked up from her legal pad. "Actually, we do. We have 43 million reasons." documented across 17 offshore accounts. Would you like me to list the shell company names alphabetically, or by date of registration? Harrison's face went pale. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and for the first time that night, real fear crossed his face. Not anger, not frustration, fear. I have to take this, he said, backing toward the door. This isn't over. No, Celeste agreed. It isn't. Your board of directors meets tomorrow morning. I wonder what they'll think when they receive the same documents the SEC just got. Harrison's face went gray. He answered the phone and stepped into the hallway, but they could all hear the panicked voice on the other end, his CFO, demanding to know why federal investigators were requesting Fletcher Industries' financial records. The door closed behind him. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Bethany exhaled slowly. Phase 1 complete. Monique looked at the women who had become her sisters in the span of 72 hours. Bethany, who had suffered longest. Vivian, who had suffered most recently. Celeste, who would make sure Harrison suffered back. Now we take everything, Monique said, and she meant it. The Fletcher Industries boardroom had witnessed hostile takeovers, billion-dollar mergers, and careers destroyed with a handshake. But it had never seen anything like the three women who walked through its doors uninvited on a Tuesday morning. The emergency board meeting had been called at 7 a.m. 12 men in expensive suits sat around a table that cost more than most people's houses, listening to Harrison explain why federal investigators were suddenly interested in the company's financial records. Disgruntled ex-wife, he was saying when the door opened. Fabricated evidence. A bitter mistress who didn't get what she wanted. This is a shakedown, gentlemen, nothing more. Monique walked in first. Behind her came Bethany. Then Vivian with baby Justice strapped to her chest in a carrier. Celeste brought up the rear, flanked by two attorneys from one of the most feared litigation firms in Manhattan. The board members turned to stare. Harrison's face cycled through shock, rage, and something that looked almost like admiration before settling on cold fury. Security, he said. Remove these women immediately. I wouldn't do that. Bethany's voice cut through the room like a blade. Mrs. Fletcher, this Mrs. Fletcher has legal standing to be here. My divorce filing yesterday triggered an automatic asset freeze, which revealed that I technically own 12% of this company through marital property. Gerald Hartwell, the board chairman, frowned. Is this true? I have the documentation right here. Celeste stepped forward, placing a thick folder in front of him. Along with evidence of securities fraud, wire fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering totaling approximately $43 million. The boardroom stretched long and intimidating. All glass walls and leather chairs designed to make outsiders feel small. Monique had been in this room before. Silent, decorative, Harrison's hand on her knee under the table as a reminder to smile and stay quiet. Today she walked to the head of that table and placed a stack of documents in front of Harrison's chair. Gentlemen, she said, her voice steady as a closing argument she'd never gotten to deliver. My name is Monique Patterson Fletcher, and I'm here to show you exactly who you've been doing business with. Harrison's eyes followed her as she spoke. Monique recognized the look. The same hungry attention he'd given her at that fundraiser 7 years ago. But now she understood what it really was. Not desire. Assessment. He was calculating whether she could still be managed. When she met his gaze without flinching, something in his expression cracked. The answer was no. The woman he'd created, passive and grateful and small, was gone. And the woman standing in her place was going to destroy him. Mrs. Fletcher, Gerald Hartwell said carefully. Which Mrs. Fletcher am I speaking to? The one with legal standing to be here. Though I understand your confusion, there are several of us. This is a circus. Harrison stood up. These women are unstable, vindictive. Unstable enough to document 14 years of your financial crimes. Bethany smiled coldly. Vindictive enough to hand that documentation to the SEC, the IRS, and every member of this board. Reginald Cross, the longest-serving board member, cleared his throat. Harrison, is any of this true? It's complicated. The offshore accounts were tax optimization, perfectly legal. Then you won't mind explaining why they're registered to shell companies that don't appear on any Fletcher Industries filing. Celeste flipped to a page in her folder. Or why $12 million was transferred to an account in your mistress's name 6 weeks before you told your board The company couldn't afford executive bonuses. Silence. The board members exchanged glances. The kind of glances that said, "This is no longer about loyalty. This is about survival." The boardroom. The place where men like Harrison feel most powerful, most protected, most untouchable. And three women just walked in and burned it down. This is what happens when you underestimate the people you've hurt. This is what happens when just a wife, and just a mistress, and just an assistant decide they're done being just anything. Are you feeling this? Drop a fire emoji in the comments if you're ready for Harrison to lose everything. "Harrison," Gerald Hartwell said slowly, "I think you should step outside while we discuss this." "Gerald, now." Harrison looked around the table, searching for allies, finding none. The men who had golfed with him, vacationed with him, protected him for years, were already calculating the distance they'd need to put between themselves and his crimes. He walked out of the boardroom. The vote took less than 5 minutes. Unanimous. Harrison Fletcher suspended as CEO pending full investigation. Corporate cards frozen. Office sealed. Name removed from the building directory by end of business. Monique found him afterward, sitting on a bench in the hallway, watching security guards change the locks on his corner office. "You could have just divorced me," he said quietly. "You could have taken the settlement and walked away." "You're right," she agreed. "But you taught me something important, Harrison. You taught me that walking away quietly is what women do when they've been convinced they don't deserve more." She stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne one last time. The same cologne that used to make her heart race. Now, it just smelled like lies. "I deserve more. We all do. And we're going to take it." She walked away without looking back. Behind her, Harrison Fletcher, oil tycoon, bigamist, fraudster, sank onto a hallway bench and watched his empire crumble. The SEC investigation was just the beginning. By Thursday, the FBI had joined. By Friday, Harrison Fletcher was the most wanted white-collar criminal in 3 states. And by Saturday, he made the mistake that would seal his fate. He tried to run. TSA agents flagged his passport at JFK. He was attempting to board a private charter to a country with no extradition treaty when federal marshals surrounded the plane. The perp walk was captured by every news camera in New York. Harrison Fletcher in handcuffs. That perfect silver hair finally disheveled. Designer suit wrinkled from the scuffle when he tried to resist arrest. Being escorted through a crowd of reporters shouting questions he refused to answer. The women watched together from Bethany's living room. The television showed Harrison being loaded into a federal vehicle. He looked smaller somehow. Without the corner office, the black cards, the army of assistants creating the illusion of importance. Just a man in an expensive suit who was about to learn what a prison cell feels like. Monique sat on Bethany's couch, hand resting on her barely showing stomach, and felt something she hadn't expected. Not joy. Not triumph. Peace. It was over. Finally, blessedly over. Prison. Harrison Fletcher is going to prison. Not because he got caught cheating. Plenty of men cheat and face no consequences. He's going to prison because 3 women decided their pain was worth documenting, their evidence was worth collecting, and their voices was worth raising. This is what accountability looks like. And I need you to remember something. Most predators don't face justice. Most liars get away with it. But sometimes, the right women find each other at the right time and refuse to stay silent. Has someone in your life ever faced real consequences for what they did? Or are you still waiting? Tell me in the comments. The charges came fast after that. Wire fraud, securities fraud, bigamy, money laundering. Facing 45 years if convicted on all counts. Monique's phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Fletcher? This is Dean Whitman from Howard University Law School. We've been following your story, and we'd like to discuss you coming back to finish your degree. 1 semester short." 5 years ago, Harrison had convinced her to give up on her dream. Now that dream was calling her back. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that very much." She visited the Hamptons mansion one final time, to collect her personal belongings, to say goodbye to a life that had never really been hers. The house was empty now, seized by federal authorities pending asset forfeiture proceedings. Monique walked through the marble hallways that used to echo with her lonely footsteps. past the library window where she'd spent so many hours staring at the ocean, wondering who she'd become. She stopped in the bedroom. The California king bed where she'd spent 5 years waiting to feel loved. The sheets were the same ones from their wedding night. Harrison had never let her change them, said they were lucky. She stripped the bed herself, stuffed the sheets in a garbage bag, left them by the curb for trash pickup. Some luck needed to be thrown away. Her phone buzzed. Her mother. "Baby, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm better than okay, Mama. I'm free." "I wanted to say I told you so. But that's not what you need to hear." "Say it anyway. You earned it." A long pause. Then Lorraine Patterson laughed. The first real laugh Monique had heard from her mother in years. "I told you so. And I'm so proud of you for getting yourself out. I was scared you never would. I almost didn't. I almost believed him forever. I almost let him take everything. But you didn't. That's what matters. Now, come home. Let me feed you. Let me remind you who you were before him." Monique looked around the empty mansion one last time. Then she walked out and closed the door behind her. 1 week after Harrison's arrest, Celeste called an emergency meeting. "There's something else in the accounts," she said, spreading new documents across Bethany's dining table. "Something I almost missed." The money trail didn't end with Harrison. It connected to someone else. Someone still in their lives. "The anonymous tip to the SEC," Celeste continued. "The one that started the investigation? It didn't come from us." The women looked at each other. They'd assumed Celeste had triggered it. She shook her head. Someone else knew about Harrison's fraud. Someone who wanted him destroyed just as much as we did. "And whoever it is," she pointed to a name on the transfer records. "They've been funding Vivian's penthouse for 3 years. From an account that belonged to Harrison's business partner. The name on the account, Preston Davenport. Harrison's best friend. The best man at his wedding to Monique. Preston Davenport had stood beside Harrison at 2 weddings and never said a word. But he'd been keeping secrets of his own, and his revenge had been running parallel to theirs all along. The restaurant Preston chose was all dark wood and hushed conversations. The kind of place where deals were made and secrets were currency. Manhattan power brokers hunched over steaks at neighboring tables, discussing acquisitions and mergers in low voices. Monique arrived alone. The other women had wanted to come, but this conversation needed to happen one-on-one, woman to puppet master. Preston stood when she approached. Impeccable manners, soft-spoken, almost gentle, nothing like Harrison's flashy confidence. But she'd learned to distrust charming men. And Preston Davenport was plenty charming. "You're smarter than he gave you credit for," Preston said as she sat down. Harrison always did underestimate the women in his life. "So did you," Monique replied. "You just hit it better." He smiled. The smile of someone who'd been waiting for this conversation. "I suppose I deserve that. You knew about all of us, for years, and you said nothing. What would you have believed?" Preston leaned back in his chair. "If a stranger approached you and said your husband had 2 other families? I would have investigated. Would you? Or would you have convinced yourself I was lying because the truth was too painful?" Monique wanted to argue, but she remembered how many red flags she'd ignored, how many excuses she'd made, how desperately she'd clung to the fairy tale even as it crumbled around her. "That doesn't excuse what you did," she said finally. "Vivian thought you were Harrison's friend. She trusted your recommendation when she took that job at Fletcher Industries. I gave her an opportunity. What Harrison did with it was his choice. You gave her to him, like a gift. Like she was something to be offered." Preston's smile faded slightly. "I gave all of you the tools to destroy him. The evidence trail, the connections, even the forensic accountant. Celeste was my referral to Bethany years ago. So this has all been your plan." "Not all of it." Something like respect flickered in his eyes. "You exceeded expectations. I thought you'd just divorce him. I never imagined you'd burn his entire empire down." He leaned forward. "You know, Harrison never deserved you. A woman with your intelligence, your resilience." "Stop." Monique held up her hand. "I know what you're doing. I've seen it before. The intense eye contact, the compliments that sound specific but could apply to anyone. The implication that you see something special no one else noticed." She stood to leave. "I'm not available for recruitment into anyone else's game. Not Harrison's, not yours. I'm done being a piece on someone else's board. Here's the truth about powerful men. They're always playing games with each other, And women are usually the pieces they sacrifice. Preston thought he was the puppet master. Harrison thought he was untouchable. And both of them forgot that the pieces can decide to flip the board. Monique just taught two billionaires the same lesson in one conversation. How many men in your life have underestimated you? How many of them regretted it? Preston didn't try to stop her. He just watched her gather her things with that same calculating smile. For what it's worth, he said, as she turned to go, I really did want him destroyed. He stole my patent in our early partnership, built his entire empire on my ideas, while cutting me out. I've been waiting 15 years for someone to help me take him down. Congratulations, it worked. Monique looked back at him one last time. But don't expect a thank you. You used us, all of us. You're just better at hiding it than he was. She left the restaurant with more than she'd arrived with. Documentation of Preston's involvement, recorded on her phone with his full knowledge. Insurance, he'd called it. For both of us. But she wasn't thinking about insurance. She was thinking about the final piece of this story. The part that belonged to her alone. Harrison's trial was 3 months away. Her baby was due in 7. And Howard University had offered to let her finish her final semester remotely. Monique Patterson Fletcher was going to become a lawyer after all. And her first case was already waiting, representing herself, Bethany, and Vivian, in the largest divorce settlement in state history. 1 year later, Monique stood at a podium in the same ballroom where she'd once served champagne to men who never looked at her face. This time, they were all looking. And she had the microphone. The ballroom glittered exactly as it had 7 years ago. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, silk gowns that cost more than most people's rent. The same venue, the same crowd of lawyers and executives and society figures. But Monique saw it differently now. Saw the invisible workers circulating with trays. Saw the women standing slightly behind their husbands. Saw the performance of wealth that she'd once mistaken for happiness. She adjusted the microphone, looked out at a sea of faces waiting for her to speak, and smiled. Not the practiced smile Harrison had trained into her. A real one. The smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out holding the match. 7 years ago, she began. I stood in this exact ballroom, carrying champagne for people who never saw me. One of those people became my husband. He told me he loved me. He told me I was special. He told me to stop chasing my dreams because his dreams were big enough for both of us. She paused. Let the silence settle. I believed him. I shrunk myself small enough to fit inside his life, and I called it love. I gave up everything that made me who I was, and I called it sacrifice. I ignored every warning sign, because I was too invested in the fairy tale to admit I was living in a nightmare. In the front row, Lorraine Patterson dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Proud tears, vindicated tears. The tears of a mother who had warned her daughter and watched her walk into disaster anyway, and somehow gotten her back. I'm not here to tell you how to spot a predator. They're too good at hiding. I'm here to tell you that when you finally see the truth, and you will, eventually, because lies always collapse, you have a choice. You can crumble. Or you can build. Monique looked at the women scattered throughout the audience. Bethany, near the back. Elegant in a dress she'd bought with her own money from her own salary at the non-profit she'd founded. Vivian near the middle, Justice sleeping in her lap, both of them finally free. Celeste at a table near the bar, already networking with potential clients. I chose to build, and I didn't do it alone. Her voice strengthened. To every woman who's been told she's crazy for noticing the cracks, trust yourself. To every woman who's been isolated from her support system, reach back out. To every woman who's sitting in a beautiful house feeling more alone than she's ever felt, there's a door, and you can walk through it. She went into that marriage as a cocktail waitress with dreams. She came out as a lawyer who helps women escape the same traps she fell into. Monique Patterson's story didn't end when she discovered her husband's lies. It started there. And that's the truth about betrayal. It can destroy you, or it can rebuild you. The choice is yours. What would you build from your wreckage? Tell me in the comments. My name is Monique Patterson, not Fletcher. I dropped that name the day the divorce was final. I'm a lawyer now. I'm a mother. I'm a friend to women who saved my life by letting me help save theirs. And I'm proof that the story doesn't end with his betrayal. She leaned into the microphone. It ends with your becoming. The applause started slowly. Then it grew. A wave of clapping that filled the ballroom and washed over Monique like absolution. After the speech, a man approached her. Not pushy, Not performing, just curious. He asked about her work, her daughter, what she'd learned from the women who'd become her sisters. He didn't try to impress her with his job title, or his car, or the size of his apartment. He just listened, asked questions, treated her like a person instead of a conquest. When the conversation ended, he gave her his card with no pressure. "If you ever want to grab coffee," he said simply, "just coffee." She tucked the card in her purse, not sure if she'd ever use it, but the fact that she could, that she wanted to, eventually, someday, when she was ready. That felt like its own kind of victory. The brownstone in Brooklyn, filled with noise every Sunday. Children running through hallways. Pots clanging in the kitchen. Women laughing over wine, while lawyers drafted motions in the dining room. It wasn't the life any of them had planned, but it was theirs. Messy, complicated, built from the wreckage of one man's lies. Monique sat at the head of the table, her daughter Hope in a high chair beside her. Hope, because that's what Harrison had tried to take. And that's what she got back. She looked around at the family she'd found in the strangest possible way. Bethany, finally free of a secret that had crushed her for 14 years. Running a nonprofit that had already helped 200 women escape financially abusive marriages. Vivian, finishing her business degree online, raising justice with a community of support instead of a web of lies. Celeste, surrounded by the women she'd helped escape, training the next generation of forensic accountants to find the money men tried to hide. Camden, and Iris, and Justice and Hope, 4 children who would grow up knowing that their mothers had faced a monster and won. To us, Bethany said, raising her glass. To the women Harrison Fletcher underestimated. To us, they echoed. And Monique drank to that, to survival, to sisterhood, to the lives they'd built from ashes. To the truth Harrison never understood, that the most dangerous thing you can do to a woman is make her realize she has nothing left to lose. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button. If you want more stories about women who refuse to stay broken, subscribe and turn on notifications. Share this with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible. That revenge can be legal and devastating, and absolutely deserved. Comment below. What part of Monique's journey hit you the hardest? Was it the discovery, the alliance, the boardroom, or watching her become the woman Harrison tried to make sure she'd never be? And remember, the most powerful love isn't the kind that rescues you. It's the kind that reminds you that you are always strong enough to rescue yourself. I'm Mr. Daniel, and I'll see you in the next one. Harrison Fletcher is serving year 2 of a 23-year sentence. He writes letters to Monique sometimes. Apologies, explanations, requests for forgiveness. She's never opened a single one. Some chapters deserve to stay closed.